My name is Honorable Mary Elizabeth Bullock. I'm from San Diego, California. I'm a retired federal civil rights judge for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I worked for the commission for approximately 8 years, and during that 8-year period I was both a judge and eventually a complainant suing the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for failure to accommodate, for discrimination based on disability, and for a hostile work environment and retaliation. At the administrative level, I won at retaliation, a hostile work environment, and discrimination based upon being disabled. I have, in the last 4 years, counseled probably 100 or 200 people who have come to me who have failed to be accommodated and are federal employees. I've either written articles that are on my own post or on their post regarding what it means to be a federal employee, their lack of due process rights, and the employers' agencies' continued failure to acknowledge disabilities, as well as their retaliatory motives and means. And that is where I have to almost gasp and say, it's so horrific. The system is systemically corrupt as well as serially corrupt. So you have to ask yourself, why do we have an agency who seeks to destroy the fabric of the American people? The United States government is the single largest employer in the United States. Jobs is the hottest 4-letter word. So people are at a time in which there's a job crunch and they're trying to be honorable in their work and cannot be, and are forced to be, instead of the Joe Lunch bucket, middle-class America, do my job honestly, they turn out to be a revision of the Stepford wife employee, where they say, yes sir, no sir, how high sir, how can I cover your ass sir, basically. Good evening. I am a retired federal civil rights judge for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Most people think of a judge as wearing a black robe or a black suit. Well, that I did. But my background is quite diverse. I was a violently sexually abused child for 10 plus years. Then I had my own growing up to do. I eventually went off to the University of San Diego College for Women, where I majored in philosophy and English and political science, and then I went to law school and also received an MBA. I was born in a very poor family. I was the oldest of 5 children, and my father was the abuser. So he not only abused me, but he sold me. So if you think back on it, to come from where I've come from, to be a federal judge means that I had the vision to want to do the right thing, to help other people and make the world a better place for disenfranchised, dispossessed, and disillusioned. That's been my only dream, and my dream to date is to make the world a better place. I tried to do that as a judge, but I found the system does not encourage honor, public service. As a matter of fact, it's a system that basically goes for the base need of corruption, greed, money, power, any way you can get it. And when it's a fight between yourself and the bureaucracy always wins. They will set out a plan for your short-term and long-term demise, and they will go after you until you are no longer the person you used to be. It's a train wreck waiting to happen. I'd like to talk briefly about what happened to me while I was a judge. During that time, I developed ovarian cancer and was in the hospital and was only 48 hours out of surgery when I got a call from the office that demanded that I come right in, regardless of the fact that I had just come out of surgery and was actually full of pain medication. The demand was from my supervisor, Larry Abrams, to come into the office at the direction of the district director, Lawless Perry. So I went into the office via ambulance, and I asked them what could possibly be so important that I had to take the IVs out and come via ambulance to this office. And he said, there were 3 of them, Christine Siegel, Larry Abrams, and Lawless Perry, the director of the LA office, asked me to change a decision I had written. Now, my boss had a case in his office for about 7 years. He had heard actually the case before him and had never written the decision up. And he asked if I would write it up for him. And I said that I'd be glad to. I was on my way to the hospital, but I was waiting for a bed at Cedars-Sinai. So I wrote a 63-page decision with probably 85 footnotes. And in that decision, I found that the Securities and Exchange Commission had discriminated against two of their attorneys, Asian national origin, and also had not been fairly paid, according to the men attorneys in the office. So I found for them on two separate violations of the Civil Rights Act and the Equal Pay Act. What happened is that that decision was completed and accepted by my boss. But in the interim, one of the women had lunch with the commissioner, Carrie Dominguez, and she said that she indeed hadn't ever received a decision after her hearing, and that she wondered what happened to her case. And the commissioner basically said, I don't know, I'll look into it, probably got lost in the mail. Well, there were two women, Judicial and Bordeaux, that were the attorneys in this particular case against the SEC. And my commissioner, the chairwoman, said, you know, I don't want the SEC, a sister agency, to suffer. So I don't want there to be a finding against the SEC. First of all, so many years have passed and the interest will be outrageous. So when I had written a decision in favor of the women and against the Securities and Exchange Commission, they asked me to change it. And although I could have been politically correct and probably found a reason not to change it based on my hospitalization, I said it's unethical, it's illegal, and it's immoral. I can't change a decision that I've already written. I've never been overturned on a decision. Why would I change it? And the three of them tried to pressure me, and I said, I'm going back to the hospital. I've given you my answer, I won't change it. And they sought to retaliate afterwards. I told them if they did change the decision that I would go public, that I would contact the two women, I would let them know that I wrote the original decision, that they changed it. As a matter of fact, it was changed so quickly, they only had a couple hours to do it, that the grammar is even incorrect in the decision. So it's an embarrassment to the EEOC to even have issued that decision. And to ask me to change it when I said I absolutely would not.
Yeah. Did they go ahead and change it?
Yes, they did.
Grammar mistakes and all?
Grammar mistakes and all.
And what's the name of that?
It was Boudreaux and Dejoux versus the Securities Exchange Commission. They were two women attorneys, Asian and national origin.
So you've got that. You've got obviously copies we could get of the original decision that you wrote. You've got the changed copy.
I have a changed copy as well.
And you informed these women. What did they say? I
informed these women, but because I told the EEOC that I would go public, they called them and told them to ignore any phone calls from me, that I was crazy. In essence, that's what they said. So ignore Judge Bullock if she calls. She doesn't speak for the commission.
And have they ever spoken with you?
No, I've attempted to contact them on multiple occasions.
Wow.
They actually have a very good lawsuit against the EEOC.
But they don't know to file it?
No, they don't know to file it because they told them not to speak to me.
I bet they haven't told them not to speak to me.
No, probably not. And I'll give you their contact information.
Well, I will contact them. I look forward to it.
And I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Anybody else you want me to contact you, let me know. I'm good for it.
I will.
This has got to be, I mean, I knew this part of the story, so I knew that this happened, but this has got to be really shocking to people watching this movie.
They should be shocked because this happens all the time. The district director of each office gets paid his Christmas bonus based on the number of cases closed. So they ask the judges to get the cases off their desks by any means possible. And most of the judges accommodate them. Most of the judges write pro-agency decisions. It's easier to just cut and paste the agency argument. And complainants, it's a sad world when I have to say to you that your chance of getting justice is slim to none. And now I was on the federal sector side, which means I heard federal employees' cases. Now my own case against the EEOC just was heard on July 30th by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and I won. And basically the EEOC, I have a terminal illness. I have MS and systemic lupus. I'm terminal. I have a spontaneous remission at the moment. But they knew I was terminal, and they dragged the 2-week trial out to almost 2 years. They found every excuse to postpone. They actually appealed the judge's decision when they found retaliation and hostile work environment and failure to accommodate. And they did everything they could to me to try and bring me down. They failed to give me initially, at least the first 3 shots at disability retirement. They have certainly messed with my pension. My supervisor at the time, Christine Siegel, told me that I would be dead by her hands, their hands, or my own hands before any money was ever passed to me. Oh yes, she said I would win my case, but I'd be dead. And I took that literally, not figuratively, because she meant it literally. Although she attested to the fact that as friends, she was just letting me know how difficult it would be for me. And I said, with friends like that, who needs enemies?
And she's an attorney?
She is one of the supervisory administrative judges for the EEOC, unlicensed, I might add. All judges are required to be licensed by the State Bar of California. She has not been licensed to practice law in approximately 18 years. And the other supervising judge was Larry Abrams, who was my supervisor at the time. At least I've been through 3 supervisors, but all of them tried to terminate me and failed miserably. He hasn't been licensed for the same amount of time. And yet they're telling me to change a decision when I'm licensed. And sometimes I had to even correct them on their version of the law. I was a law professor for almost 10 years. And so I taught discrimination law. That's one of the reasons they asked me to be a judge. Although in retrospect and from talking to the NAACP, it looks like they took me out of commission because I was costing the government too much money by winning cases for complainants who had been discriminated against. And they really didn't know what to do with me. So they asked me to be a judge, I heard, rather than have to see me on the other side of the courtroom, which is discouraging because I know the law. And as the Ninth Circuit Court said in the blogs, I actually know better than the EEOC knows their own law. So.
Now, as I look at your resume, you formerly worked for the Bar Association.
I did. My last position with the State Bar of California was as a prosecuting attorney for judges who had misconduct issues. And that was the last position I held before I came to the EEOC. And as a matter of fact, I wrote them a letter and said, do you see that there's a conflict? Because if there is, then I need to withdraw from pro bono service to you, and my allegiance is to the EEOC. Actually, my allegiance is to the U.S. Constitution, and not to any particular agency, as it turns out. The mission statement for the EEOC is to eradicate all vestiges of discrimination, and that's not what they do. They are highly ineffective. They're ineffective because they're corrupt. The word comes down from Washington, D.C., from the chairwoman, who has, one right after another, has basically sustained a systemically corrupt system. This year, she asked, Jacqueline Berrien asked for the investigators to find 50 less cases of the right to file a complaint. And of course, judges are told to dismiss cases because the district offices need numbers. So when it comes to justice, there is precious little.
I've got so many questions I want to ask. I want to flip back and ask about closed cases, because you said that the
District director
got paid a bonus based on closed cases.
That's right.
Does that mean cases that see themselves to a conclusion, or ones where the people get shut out and it gets
It's where
closed
people
on?
get shut out. They don't even get an opportunity to, they file a complaint, and then the judges are told to dismiss them, so you have sua sponte summary judgment. Or they're dismissed on their face for being facially, do not contain all the elements that are required to file a complaint. So it's, they're dismissed.
Okay. So the district director received a bonus for making cases
Every
go
year.
away without people having an opportunity to even pursue their remedies.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, at the state bar, your job is to sue judges.
That was my position, was to be a prosecuting attorney for judges who had misconduct issues.
And did you get to do much of that?
No, actually what happened is that the bar said it wasn't a conflict, but because I was new at my job, I didn't want to have my loyalty split, so I resigned from the state bar. I had worked for them for almost a decade. I was a probation monitor before for unethical office practices because I have an MBA. I helped other attorneys with their billing and filing and not to get into the legal funds and use their clients' funds on a trust fund.
Well, you'll apologize for being so jaded, but unfortunately, I agree with that representative in Kentucky who said they feel like the attorneys are the root of a great many of our problems. He actually said most of our problems.
Well, they are.
How does the Bar Association even get any authority? I'm not aware of any law or anything. Is there a law that puts the Bar Association in charge of the various things they're in charge of?
They've made their own laws, basically, and you have to understand they're an organization banned for profit. They come together for profit. So you have attorneys who have to pay between $350 and $500 a year for dues. That dues all go into a pool, and they pay salaries of prosecuting attorneys for the state bar. And anyone can file a complaint. It's free. You can say anything you want to about any lawyer you want to. And should you have a well-written letter, they will actually pursue the complaint. Now, in my case, when they came after me, it was on an absolutely bogus statement made by our internal litigation attorney because, you see, they knew that I was going to retire and then I was going to go back to representing complainants, and they didn't want that. It cost them too much money. Over there are books. Those are books of all my commendations over the last 25 years, and they say that I'm unethical. I beg to differ. They made it up.
Did they take away your license?
They suspended my license. I spent $250,000 for a JD MBA, and they took it because John Sherlock, who was the attorney under internal litigation, was the attorney that came after me, and he made it personal, and it got real personal and real ugly because I would not stand down for my position. And because he knew I was terminal, it was his hopes that he would take me out, and they did everything they could. And the state bar bought it because it came from an attorney at the EEOC. But if you look at the report that they used to submit it, you'll see that any report where charges are filed, you have to have an opinion or a statement from the defendant. They never once talked to me, which is interesting. So the report itself is in violation of their own Office of Inspector General rules. And I have 3 separate affidavits that state the Office of Inspector General, the person who interviewed everyone else, never interviewed me. And he said that on 3 separate occasions. I have 3 separate witnesses. So they never interviewed me. They just wrote what they wrote and submitted it to the bar.
So all the people out there who've had the same experience, they're not allowed to present evidence, they don't ever talk to them. They
No.
Shouldn't feel like the Lone Ranger. It happens to judges too.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, what's the most important thing for a judge? It's not the money you earn. It's only being a public servant. I left a very active practice of law in the 6 figures to make starting $56,000. You drop your budget from $350 an hour to less than $10 an hour, and I'm telling you, that's a real wake-up call. But I did it to serve. It was a public service. And I think that today our public servants are dishonorable, and it's worse than death to no longer be what you are to the public. You no longer serve. You're corrupt. You're in there for power and greed and money. You know, there are all kinds of favors. But certainly it isn't based on being a public servant. Not in the true sense of the word.
I asked whether being a sociopath is a inherent
Required.
trait or a learned trait to a psychiatrist person. And she said, well, there's a lot of debate over that, but
Certainly is.
it seems like most of the judges are sociopaths.
Well, I would go one step further. DSM-4 no longer has sociopaths or psychopaths.
So they're psychopaths, okay.
Okay, in other words, they operate on the pain and pleasure principle. You know, I don't do anything unless I have a gain in it, and I will do what I can to inflict pain if it means gain. And they aren't kidding. They are so far removed from the individual, and they realize that the consequences of their act are the intended consequences of destroying a perfectly decent, kind, loving human being. And they do it anyway. There's a difference between the objective truth and the subjective truth. And they no longer stick with the objective truths. They turn facts into fantasy. And lies today carry more weight and authority than the truth. The more outrageous the lie, the louder they scream the lie, the more they scream the lie, the more it's believed by people. Where the truth seems to be not very sexy and sort of boring. And that's the tragedy with our society today. They will buy a lie. And the agencies will tell it.
Do you think that we're beyond hope? What can we do? Is what I'm doing, has it got any chance of succeeding? We have to get our 99% of us out here who don't have the power, the control, and the money to somehow wake up and take our country back. That's how I see it. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely. I worry for the middle class. I worry for the average person who feels like I can turn to the government. And the federal government, look, they have Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They make sure that the workplace is free of discrimination and retaliation. But the reality is they don't. As a matter of fact, they inflict it more than they protect, both the public and the federal sector.
And you think that's across the board, not just EEOC?
It's across the board. I've seen it across the board. I've seen it with EPA. I've seen it with ATF. I've seen it with the Attorney General's office, Department of Justice. Department of Justice, when it came to my lawsuit against the EEOC, bald-faced lied to a federal judge saying that I had not exhausted my administrative remedies, when I indeed had. So this was just one more step. My case is 10 years old. So it's now in its 10th year before I will see the inside of a courtroom. And they did that on purpose in hopes that I would die. Well, I think what happened is that the more mean-spirited they became, the more absolutely entrenched I became in the truth and pursuing the truth and making sure that the people understood about how corrupt the office was. And like any consumer on any purchase or contract that they enter into, that they really look behind it, that they make sure that their judge is licensed. I mean, you can't practice law without a license. These judges are practicing law without a license. In California, it's extremely bad. So it's a fair statement to say that I wouldn't be working so hard if I didn't think there wasn't a chance to make the world a better place. Otherwise, I would have given up a long time ago. I refuse. So yes, I think that what you're doing is the most honest thing I've seen anyone do in a long time.